Sometimes both have.
Yeah. It's just sort of like, too many times I see, you know, we have infrastructure, it's like, you know, keep pushing people out rather than, you know, allowing them to, you know, hire closer to. That's just my 2 cents.
Go to the
We
township.
had one challenger from the Democratic Party. She came into ours first.
Go, you still
I
can
said,
go.
oh, by the way.
Yeah, Valley.
And then this
Still
is
there.
Some point was that Hubert, she has 3 seconds. Thank you. Talk to her. She said, oh, yeah, I just went.
Yeah, it was about,
So this is the password for the RAC chair at township.org.
we can't, because this is a special election.
Oh, that is what code.
So I went back to 2 years.
Okay, so I still don't have,
We go
And
through
then
this
2
whole
years before that was 2018.
there's also.
I mean, nothing on the ballot for us,
know that.
so we did pretty well. Yeah, and I just think that people 1,400.
But for a primary with all.
Yeah.
Absentee.
2036.
Yeah. No, it just. Not that many people there the whole time.
How are you? Oh, I'm fine. This is the first time I've seen you since your accident.
I look a lot better than I do.
I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:44 p.m. Very much for coming out in the rain. Guys for the delay.
That's
Very
me,
bad.
sorry.
Ian, can you see us? Is it working?
Yep.
Okay. All right, well, we start at the top of the agenda. I guess we need to do a roll call. And Roy has kindly offered to be the secretary for the evening.
Yeah. Is it thing on the screen?
Yeah.
Roll call.
Yeah. If remember at the June meeting, we said we'd rotate and I agreed I do the August meeting, so that's fine. So,
Okay, ready to go?
do I do the roll call? You do?
I can do it. I just ready
Okay,
to
go
go.
ahead.
All right, Linda Smith here, Roy Townsend,
Here.
Jillian Kerry,
Here.
Bob Groden,
Here.
Ian Hubert,
Eh.
Kathy Knol here. Rakesh Sharma is out of the country. Patrick Shields,
Here.
Bob Walsh.
Here.
Great. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the agenda for this evening?
I have one proposed change.
Sure.
So under H and H1 new business, you've got down, discuss ideas for Park Road improvements to create a plan for the road improvement between Cedar Ridge and Zeeb Road to move forward. I would propose a more general discussion on Park Road as
Fine.
the characterization of what we're going to do.
That's just fine. I was trying to include it after item I heard you mention at the Board of Trustees meeting last week, asking that it be put on the agenda. So H1, new business. No.
H2.
It's H2.
Sorry. General discussion about Park Road. Does
That's
anyone have any objections to change? Does anyone else have any other amendments? Bob Groden asked me to make sure that we had a brief discussion about Mr. Bogan and Liberty Hills, which is not in this agenda. Would you like that to be added?
Sure.
Yes.
I think it's unfinished business under H2 probably. So we'll do that, okay? Yeah.
Box on the screen for
Oh,
residents, please.
yes. To move it where I can see them if they put their hand up or has to be added is the problem. Okay.
If you slide it over to the other screen, it will disappear.
Oh, look at that. Thank you. I can be taught. All right. Thank you, Julie. Did anyone else have any other additions to the agenda for this evening or changes requested? Hearing none, can someone please make a motion to adopt?
Make a motion. Yep.
Anyone want a second? Ian Hubert, motion by Ian Hubert to adopt the agenda for this evening, August 3rd, seconded by Walsh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes, which turned out to be minutes of June, because we did not have a July meeting. Our most recent minutes. Did anyone have amendments or changes to the June minutes? Jillian?
Yes, under public comments, it's listed as Sandy Ryder. That was Bill and Cynthia Bogan that logged in under their friends Zoom. So if we can clarify.
So I
that.
should make it Bill and Cynthia Bogan instead. There, okay. Any other changes? Yes,
I was present at the meeting.
and you're
not on
showing
Zoom.
presence, I'm sorry. Right. Any other changes to the agenda from June? Dear, I have no idea what just happened. Janet's iPad has taken over. Here, let's try this. Oh, come on. I didn't touch anything. There. Thank you. All right, hearing no other requests for changes to the June minutes, would someone be willing to make a motion to approve the road supervisor? Bob Walsh has made a motion. Is anyone willing to second? Bob Groden seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, communications and correspondences. And I added the Excel spreadsheet that shows the correspondences we've had since the June meeting. And we've got a couple people that are still interested in, I don't know, doing business with or having us help them solve some problems that we haven't solved. So the Grodens are one of them, and Green Knol's neighborhood, Shady Oak is another one. And then I got another email late through Lou Kidder that was yet another person from the Shady Oaks Green Knolls subdivision, asking if we were doing anything with that. I'm not exactly sure how to move the ball forward on these things. You know, we're trying to respond to citizens, but I don't know that we're responding the right way, or how do we respond to people who have most recently contacted us about issues that we've had in front of us for 2 or 3 months? Do we just keep telling them we're working on it? Correspondences.
I think it depends on the issue.
Okay, well, I guess try to pull a couple of these out of the hat and see if we can get somewhere with them this evening. Does anyone have any other correspondences they received, or yes, Bill?
I just noticed on your spreadsheet, that I assume this is a spreadsheet that you keep adding to.
Yes.
The listing for the email address for me has an error in it, and I don't know if anyone would ever use this to try and.
I will correct it. Thank you.
I would hate to frustrate people.
I see that. That's rather bad. I'm sorry. I can correct that. Thank you. All right. Did anyone else have contact with anyone that I do not have on this list that we weren't aware of? I need to add.
We have Janet Meadow and
Yeah.
David Reed.
I don't have a recent letter from David Reed. I have a June 25th that
Oh, the David Reed letter correspondence was in the board packet. That probably should have been there. So the issue is with both of these SADs is there's problems after the construction, and they're not getting answers on when they're going to be fixed. And I've been out to both of them, and I can clearly see what these issues are. I took pictures. Here.
May I ask, was it the David Reed one in the most recent board packet?
Yes,
Okay, I missed it.
and I couldn't open that either. When I went to open it, it gave me an error, something about,
Yes, it did me as well, so I
Okay,
didn't actually read it.
so
So I'll try and find it and see if I can add it, but from the most recent.
were you able to open it?
I had the packet printed for me,
Oh,
so it was there in the printed packet.
I'll try and get it from Christie and add it to our
Yeah.
list, thank you. That's why I said there's some things that don't necessarily come through that RAC at Scio Township.org, and I want to make sure we're at least including everyone that's contacted or trying to contact us. All right, well, I know we've already moved past our agenda item to add anything, but do we need to add SADs that were in process, completed but not yet resolved to the agenda?
Westview Way, Southwood Court, what's going on with that? I don't think they've started
They
construction.
have not started construction up there. I think they were waiting to see what was happening with the water main initially this spring, because it sounded like the water main was going to impact that. It did not, and then they just haven't started. Roy, do you know anything about Westview Way off of West Liberty?
Who is overseeing that?
They
Project.
delayed to start because the water main construction was sort of in that area, and they didn't want to they didn't want to do the work on Westview Way and then have it immediately dug up by people doing the water main, or driven over by heavy trucks. So they did hold off on that one, and my understanding is that Kyle at Cadillac is in the process of getting that on their schedule to start.
Well, part of why I'm asking these, we should, all of us, be aware as these projects unfold. But it was suggested for these 4 SADs to be put on the website. And before I was working with Mary Gillis and changing our, polishing it up and whatnot. But we got to that point where I think she was going on vacation, so we couldn't work on the rest. So it was the 4 SADs. And the other one, what's the other SAD? Wagner,
Ridge is complete now.
that is complete. Okay, we can put that up there too.
Yeah, the only thing that needs to happen with these is, those first 3 is, I think both Daleview and Merlin, there's these last sort of cleanup items that have to be done. And so Joe Maynard, I think, is sort of monitoring that, because on both of those, Washington Engineering is overseeing the construction. So they have a role. Washington Engineering, Joe Maynard has a role with those 2 SADs, but not with Wagner Ridge and Westview. It's sort of a lesser role with those 2.
Okay, so do you think Joe could give us reports then?
We could, yeah, probably the best thing to do would be to have him loop the committee email address in on his communications, and that way you guys are just in the loop. I've tried to stay in touch with him, and he sometimes remembers to keep me in the loop with on some of these kind of communications. That's how I knew that there were still things with Merlin and Daleview that he's still wrapping up.
Who will be overseeing road paving projects, or just, I guess, special assessments? It doesn't have to be road paving.
Well, that's a question for this.
That's
You know,
one of the things we talked
One
about.
of
at the
the
last
things
meeting.
on the list to sort of get advice about is how we want to manage these things going forward. In the past, Joe and Washington Engineering were kind of the go-to outside engineering consultant for SADs, but it doesn't have to, continue. I think part of the reason that that decision was made is that Washington Engineering is more economical than using OHM, for example, to oversee SATs.
Okay, sure, yes, but in the future, because we're kind of out of the loop with Joe, and then we get the feedback from the residents that we have all these issues, and we're kind of stuck, like, how do we take care of them?
well, these are the sort of trailing SADs from the prior practices. But how we do things going forward, you know, is open to, it's an open question.
Well, one of the things I'm thinking is that you should make an effort to communicate with this entire committee when issues emerge. Any issues like pertaining to roads.
Well, I do try to keep you guys informed, but I'll try to do better. Make sure that I'm including these kind of details that Joe brings up. And when I heard you guys talking about it, I realized that that's a missed opportunity.
We're trying to come up with a better plan for the future for both the initial contact with the people that have a road issue that they think they want an SAD, but they need guiding, which was sort of the original Lou Kidder and of the old Scio Advisory Committee place, as well as then the engineering firm or the construction consultant that is the oversight person. It's kind of a whole separate topic to wrestle. We can add it to this evening, or we can add it to the September meeting, but it really does need to be. There needs to be a flow chart or something so that the Scio Township has a way to make it happen, because right now it just happens organically the way it has happened for years. That's about it.
There is another item we haven't discussed, kind of fell off the table, I think, the meeting that Roy and I attended with Will and the Park Ridge. And Amy Friedman and Lisa Tulin. They've been trying to get somebody from WCRC, I guess, to come out. And they had a meeting set up, it got canceled. You saw that email, I guess. And I haven't heard anything since.
Yeah, I think it's, the ball is definitely in the road commission's court, I think, with summer holidays and construction projects. But I guess, either we can reach out or if they can reach out, 'cause they're the ones who initiated the meeting. We were just agreeing to meet out there with them. I haven't heard anything since the follow-up. That's supposed to be like in early July, I believe, the second week of July or something like that. I really haven't heard anything when it's supposed to be rescheduled, because here it is. Now it is August, and so.
So what does the road commission plan to do, or what was decided?
Part of the discussion was, when this was, when this issue came up a few years ago, the people, and I'll be real concise, they didn't want to pave because they would have to widen the road. It wasn't 24 feet, et cetera, and they would have to remove X number of trees, hundreds of trees. So the people decided against it. So when we met, we kind of reframed the issue to say, what is the real issue we're trying to solve here? And had to do with drainage. And suggestion was, well, on our street a few years ago, they came, they did the substrate, crowned the surface, and it's held up really well without having to tear down a whole bunch of trees, et cetera. So the agreement was, oh, that sounds good. Why don't we go back and try to get somebody out from WCRC, an engineer, to take a look and walk the street with us. And I said I would be there with them and decide, again, frame the issue properly. And what are the options outside of paving? Don't even talk about paving, because that got to be a sore spot with the neighbors.
Okay.
And someone was supposed to come out and meet with the neighborhood. And eventually they canceled. And I haven't heard anything since. So I don't know what we can do to encourage that person to come out, or what happens next.
I can reach out to the road commission, and see, has that meeting been rescheduled? Because
An email might be very helpful, just to promote it. You're right, it is summertime.
since it is,
Thank you, that would be very helpful.
okay.
Just to be clear, the part that wouldn't be paved is the part that's unpaved now, but they were talking about paving the parts at the end, either end, possibly that were paved before where it would be repaving.
Yeah, repave the paved areas and put gravel and drainage on the gravel areas. Is what.
When did they pave the two areas? Does anybody know that?
1988 was one area, and prior to that, the other area. Lauren tied.
They're not in great shape.
definitely no.
or potato chip.
And were those the special assessments through?
The one off of Wagner, that Park Ridge, yes, because I was involved with that in 1988.
And that was through it had to be through the road commission because
Yeah.
the township wasn't doing. At that time.
All right, well, we sort of jumped into new business without giving public comment opportunity. And I'd like to take just this minute, so if there's anyone that wants to speak, we don't keep them through the whole meeting, an opportunity to speak. Is there anyone, member of the public, that would like to speak? I see Janet's iPad. I apologize, I don't know who that is. Would you like to speak?
It's Jan Meadow, and I'm following up on the letter that I sent on June 25th. I did not hear back from anybody, including Joe Maynard. Jillian, I did speak to Jillian. Thank you, Jillian, for coming out and taking a look, but nobody from the bot. And the issue I have is in May, the end of May, Joe Maynard said they were getting ready to make payment to the contractor. We still have these outstanding issues that I outlined in my email. And I'm still up in the air. Has the contractor been paid?
I think it's still pending.
Well, what is the resolution since May to now August? There has been, the only activity that has been done that I'm aware of is the contractor came out and sprayed seed down over the piping in the lines laying on the ground. There was no, I talked to them. They said that there was no work order to lay dirt down. In the sprinkler heads are in the gravel section of the road. And those need to be moved. All those sprinklers were marked. They need to be moved out of the gravel section. They'll just be damaged if they're not moved. So I'd like somebody to take ownership and provide a status. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I didn't give my address. It's 3132 Daleview.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address us this evening from the Zoom audience? All right, seeing no hands, I guess we will convene back into the business. All right, there we go. So the reason I put the item in new business that said, let's try and create a flow chart was a discussion that was held at the June meeting, trying to make more successful neighborhood SAD experiences. Luke Kidder had a 2013 and Scio Local Roads Committee timeline that he had put together that sort of, if someone came forward and said, this is what we're looking to do, would be a timeline template. But we don't have a township contact, and we don't have a good way to initiate the next step after we try and have a meeting with citizens. Brainstorming, how can we make this move forward? We've got several SADs that, they're trying to close down and need some help with the last details. We've got several that would like to start up. But I think we really need to make a roadmap.
Ian, isn't that what you're working on?
It is.
I'm working on the document, yeah.
The document?
We've been working on the document, but not very quickly. Did I share it? I was under action item to share it. Did I send it to everybody?
Honestly, it's been a month and a half, and I'm not sure. If
Yeah,
I think you may have at that point in
Yeah.
time where we were, but one of the things that was a key sticking point was that it said, if you'd like help with your roads, contact the township administrator.
Right.
And then we didn't have one. Or the town, and so we were trying to figure out, now that Mr. Rowley's gone,
Oh, Jim Murdy's our
Mr.
engineer.
Murray's there for the moment, but we can't really put his name in
rather than get hung up on that, I would just leave it like that, honestly, and if it changes, we update the doc.
And Mr. Murdy has said he's willing to, take those emails and forward them to us and us try and start the discussion on behalf of the township.
Yeah.
So for the people that are interested in moving forward, Green Knolls, Shady Oaks subdivision, and Park Ridge subdivision, both of them had previous sort of pre-SADs, and now they want to push forward.
Well, actually, that neighborhood did have an SAD.
Well, they're asking for another.
Well, okay, so this is where, reading up and reading through, with the Michigan property tax code and whatnot, or tax, Joe Turner, is that once an SAD, or a special assessment, brings a special benefit to those properties. And paving a road, that brings the special benefit, it raises the value. And then it's up to the municipality to maintain that, because repaving the road does not bring another special benefit to that property. It doesn't raise the value of that property. So I have been in correspondence with Joe Turner. He's had surgery, so we're back and forth in between and whatnot. And we had talked about inviting him to go through special assessments, the ins and outs. He's been doing this for over 40 years. So I think that we really need to get clear on special assessments and the ins and outs, the laws and whatnot, because we do not want to go through what we've been going through with our citizens or with our residents.
But especially, it doesn't guarantee, if they have the road paved, that contract doesn't say the township's gonna take on that responsibility to maintain it forever, does it? I guess I've never.
Well, there's case law that has, where the residents have sued after they've had a special assessment. And then there was more improvement to be done, and they've sued the cities and whatnot, and it was ruled in favor of the residents that the city or the municipality had to maintain that.
I guess I've done SADs for 30 years. If that's really the law, if I'm on Scio's board, I would not do another SAD, because you're taking on a financial burden. People want the road improved, but I can't, like a roof doesn't last forever. There's a life expectancy of it. So, the numerous ones I did for the road commission, if it was a guarantee that that road was gonna last forever.
No, but that's not the point. It's the point of the special assessment brings a special benefit. So that's how they assess those properties. And the only special benefit is if it raises the property value. So repaving a road, does that bring more of a value to that property?
Yes.
Does it?
I would say,
If you had a failed road, a pothole road, you got a new road repaved, yes. Do you want to live on a road that has potholes?
I do.
Okay, well then.
I want to live on a gravel road.
Okay, well, that's a choice, but people, obviously, all the SADs that are before us, a lot of them are paved roads that want to be repaved because the road didn't last forever. No road lasts forever, So I think, so to make, the expectation that the township or whatever municipality does SAD is going to maintain it forever. The township doesn't have financial resources to maintain those local roads.
We have our township-wide SAD that we pay into.
$85 a year is not going to take care
Well,
of
we have, it has created a large amount of money, and we even
roads
had.
are very expensive too.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think we're getting off
Well, see,
topic.
this is where we need to get clear, because the things I've been reading, and that's not the only website or information. There was a list from both Warshaw and David Rowley, and then other, that reading through, that we really need to get clear on this, and we need to have, from a legal point of view, from an assessor's point of view, we just don't want to get into a situation down the road, because we are a general law township. You don't need to have any more lawsuits. And we want to do right by our residents. We don't want to, I wouldn't if I found out later that I was charged for something that I shouldn't have been. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case, but we need to get clear on all of this. And this advisory board is supposed to be educating, we're supposed to be educating ourselves.
Getting back to the financial matter, isn't this then a matter for the board and the township attorneys to be aware of? Because that will affect the decision potentially down the road of do we actually accept an SAD or not? Because if it comes down to that the township is forever responsible, that then goes to the board.
Well, it's certainly a question that we can pose to our legal counsel and get an opinion.
I'm sorry, Kathy, I didn't mean to interrupt. Could we add or pair with that the legal question, which Jillian has also brought up, which is, oh, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. If people want to come forward to propose an SAD and they would like to have the township assist them with the SAD, are we going to charge them for the engineering as a pre-SAD, the engineering to try and understand what it is that needs to happen to their neighborhood and then take that information and move forward? Or should the engineering, as Jillian has held out at a couple of meetings from some case law, be a part of the entire SAD? So the township should pay that and then, you know, create the ask of the citizens, and if the SAD moves forward, be reimbursed of that from the one-time SAD.
There was, through Fahey Schultz, there was a break, I think it was Fahey Schultz, one of the links that I had sent, they broke down the process very clearly. And nowhere in there did they say if it doesn't go past an engineering, that is a special assessment. So the way that how you'd read it is that if we knew what we were doing, I mean, we're learning here. So, you know, like on the road commission, for example, they've been doing special assessments for ever, right? So they can, when they would be connected with those, let's say, green knolls, because they did that SAD. Then they would come out and give, you know, they would be able to say, oh, this is what, this is an estimate or a guesstimate of what needs to be done. And we've been doing this for a long time, and this is gonna cost between $150,000 and $300,000. So to give that broad range, and would you want to move forward? Because it could be $300,000, but it could be $150,000 or somewhere in between. Then residents can say, yeah, well, I think we really want our road paved or improved or whatever. So let's move it forward. Here's the petition packet and go from there.
Jillian, I just want to correct that is an estimate. It's not anything that we have information about. That was an example that you made, but
Yes.
if anyone's listening from Green Knolls, those are not numbers we have obtained anywhere.
No, this is just an example of, and this is when I had my drain issues in my neighborhood. The drain commission went to them, they came out and looked at everything and they said, yeah, this is a potential, we could put a drain in. And I said, and then we had a neighborhood meeting with the drain commission, and the residents asked, how much is this gonna cost? And they gave us a huge, you know, between, it was $150,000 to $300,000. That's why those numbers keep popping up in my head. And so we sat there and we talked with each other and we said, well, would we be able to, you know, sell our house if we didn't do this? And no, we couldn't. So we decided to go through no matter how much it cost. So then from there, we had to do the petition packet and the whole process.
Well, the thing I was trying to propose, I think that it perhaps has reached the point where it wouldn't be a bad idea to try and clearly, specifically write down a document to hand to one of the township's attorneys and say, these are two issues that we would like to have clearly spelled out for us so that we can move forward.
I've got the first one written down, but could you rephrase the second one?
Jillian, you might do it better. Should the engineering?
Can the engineering be a special assessment on its own?
Okay.
the initial engineering, to move a project from, gee, we would like to do this, to this is what it's going to cost.
No, not the township paid for it. Once if they decide to move forward with the petition, after they have a kind of a ballpark of what the cost would be, and they say yes, once they sign that petition, that starts the ball rolling all the way through the improvement. And the improvement is the construction itself, not the engineering.
What happens if they decide not to, but there are still engineering charges? Who pays for that?
Well, may I interject, because this is something that I discussed with Jim Murdy in June, trying to sort of noodle this through, because we in June also had a discussion about the fact that there were historically, back to Lou Kidder's days, sort of the first 3 SADs that came forward every year got some township matching funds.
Yes.
It was never written down. It's not part of any document that anyone can find, but yet it was sort of the way things were handled. Depending on the size of your SAD and where you sort of came in line each year. If a neighborhood had asked for help, there was some township matching funds. And it was proposed that instead of taking that money for just 3 specific SADs, we could pull that and hold that back for the engineering costs and be able to perhaps do more for more neighborhoods, because we would have a little more latitude for how the money would be spent rather than using it for matching for just a few neighborhoods.
So what are you answering now? Are you saying that the township will have a fund for the engineering analysis?
That was the way that Jim Murdy proposed it. Instead of, I think it's in the June agenda, maybe it was in the May agenda. The
I think
$8,000, $12,000, a project, $8,000 for projects under $100,000, $10,000 for projects over $100,000, and $12,000 for projects over $200,000.
That's the formula.
Were the formula for an original historic incentive that was given to SAD neighborhoods by the board.
How many projects could be done in a season? Like how many? 3? Is it, because it sounds like that's what they expected was 3, no more than 3, because they only had the 3.
I don't know that there's a limit. I mean, there's sort of a limit to the, the capacity of the township to sort of process SADs, sort of move them through the board and so on, especially because we don't have a dedicated staff person for that function. But I think that if I remember the conversation and understand this question correctly, it's yeah, there's quite a few in some years on this list in the packet. The idea was, instead of breaking it out the way the township has in recent years, where you have a sort of an initial engineering SAD, and then the second construction SAD is sort of contingent on the acceptance by the neighborhood of the price that emerges from the cost that emerges from that initial engineering SAD. Instead of doing that, because the township was a few times left kind of holding the bag when a neighborhood changed its mind and said, no, we don't want to go forward, it costs too much. Would be, instead of putting that money, in sort of like these little increments into SADs as a way to sort of buy down the cost just marginally, is to pool that money, use it for the upfront cost of the engineering, and then for those projects that went forward, just like the materials that you found, Jillian, the cost of engineering and other costs that the township incurs would be rolled into that SAD, because that's legal. But every once in a while, there would be an SAD that didn't go forward, and because of sort of shifting those funds, the township would, be okay sort of eating the cost occasionally for an SAD that didn't move forward.
Right now, as the materials are pretty high, we're heading for a recession. We are starting that. How much are Roy, as far as materials, do you have any insight on that right now? Have they gone up? Because this is,
I mean, substantial. I mean, depending on what type you're talking about, you know, the oil and the HMA, and the asphalt's gone up substantial. Limestone, everything's gone up 15–20%. You know, some things more, some things a little less. So yeah.
well, I'm thinking that if we start this process, we have engineering and a lot of neighborhoods say no because it's too much because of materials going up and whatnot. Then we're gonna be,
It's a very tough environment to float SAD numbers for new paving. We were fortunate that Cadillac Asphalt agreed to honor its numbers for the 2021 SADs that were bid. But there is no promise at this point in time, if you were able to create one yet this year and bid it, that the numbers would look attractive to a neighborhood. But if we don't do anything and we wait till next spring, you know, we've still got 3 or 4 neighborhoods that are asking for help.
It could be helpful to remove that initial step, you know, making the engineering its own independent SAD, because if we just, you know, streamline the process, we might be able to move more quickly. I think part of what I observed last year with those 4 SADs is that the 2-step process took so long, and there was this gap in between, you know, the approval of the engineering and the delivery of the prices, and then the approval of the construction SADs, that we wound up at the end of the construction season. But if we could move more quickly, we might be able to get projects approved, the construction phase approved sooner, and then maybe we wouldn't be in that awkward position where we're rolling over to another year and trying to hold contractors to quotes that, you know, when prices are going up.
So you're proposing that the engineering cost will be covered by the township?
Yeah, somehow I think that makes sense. And it sounds like legally it makes sense to move in that direction too.
should we, oh, go
I have
ahead.
no idea.
Sorry.
Just real quick, a lot of these projects, you know, I've done a lot of SADs, and a lot of them are sort of straightforward. That's where the road commission or, you know, someone in my freshman, you can go out there and say it's gonna be, all we gotta do is, you know, repave, pulverize this pavement, and you have those numbers because you're doing that each year, you're doing miles of it. So then the engineering is pretty minimal up front, so that's why you can give them out, you know, resurface this road. Obviously, you got the cost escalation, which is, you know, makes it more complicated, but for the most part, if you know you're gonna do a project next year, and you've been doing projects for the last 10 years, you know it's gonna increase this much and da. So I think most SADs fall in that category. It's some of them where you get into drainage, like Mr. Bogan's, yeah, and Park Ridge, different things like that, that you really do need engineering. It's not as simple as this road was developed as a subdivision 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Maybe it was paved originally, now it needs to be repaved. Sometimes there were gravel subdivisions that were paved, you know, 20 years out, now we are 20 years later. So there's different, so I think some of the, doing the engineering up front could save some time. One caveat that you might want to consider though, is if, you know, if Joe Citizen comes in here, one person says, hey, I'd like you to do an engineering study for my neighborhood, you know, we, as a township, gonna say, okay, yeah, let's start that and spend, you know, because engineering studies could easily be $50,000, depending on the complexity. So it seems like you might want to have criteria like, to do that, we'd want 25% of the people in this neighborhood, or some number that would want this engineering study done to create a number, so you can then decide if you want to do a special assessment district for that neighborhood. Not just, you know, 2 people, it's like, hey, I got a good idea, like, you know, and find out, well, like no one else in the neighborhood is even interested in doing it. So there's some kind of a threshold, and if they say yes, the township hires an engineering firm, they go out and then crunch the numbers and do it and find out, are there drainage problems? No. If there are, yeah, we got to do with engineering. Do we get to get water resources involved? Or, you know, is it, you know, bigger than that? Or is it as simple as like, oh, we just need to repave your road. It's simple like we've done the other ones. And then we, you know, engineer can, okay, let's put that together. Let's put numbers together. And Then you can go right to the second step, it's gonna be 5,000 a lot, 10,000 a lot, whatever that number is, and keep that process moving. So I think that would be, and the little incentive money that we put in, that we did, 10 or more years ago, it's $10,000. Most of these SAPs are what, $300,000, so it's like the $10,000, each person gets
Yeah, I think it's.
$100, $200. It's like, if you're willing to put up, $5,000, are you really worried about the $100 incentive or $200 incentive? Rather than just, engineering, you could save, a lot of people, some time and energy. And at the end of the day, what the township's gonna need is, I think, and we struggle with that, is who is the point person? Because, most of us here are all volunteers. Now, I've done it, I'm willing to help out in some, but really, that's not really gonna be our capacity. We're gonna need a point person to manage these things. And you can have a consultant like Joe. I mean, Joe's great, but if it's not someone at the township, I mean, that's my experience with the road commission. If it's not somebody internal, if Joe goes somewhere else, it becomes complicated, and you got Joe Public calling in. It's like, he called the township because I live in this township, and I figured it's like, oh no, you got to call this consultant, and it just, so that's why I think having a point person within the township, whoever that is, if it's Mr. Murdy or whoever, it just helps streamline it for. And then same thing at the beginning of the process, they would contact, this person's like, okay, explain that, and we're working on this process. So try to outline it so the Joe citizen can understand it, because it's complicated, but I mean, once you go through a few times, like, okay, it's really not that bad. But you need someone to help guide you. If you're Joe citizen, you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That's why you need someone on staff to really help.
It sounds like a staff.
Are you proposing that we write a recommendation to the Board of Trustees that a partial staff position be established and it be handed to someone? I agree with you. If it's somebody's job, then it will get done. If
Yeah.
it's not.
And maybe,
anyone's
let's all think
job.
about it, maybe at the September meeting, think about the staff person and think about the engineering initiative. Do we want, that the township would just take that on? And, the old incentive program, maybe we just say, that sounded like a good idea 10 years ago, but really maybe setting that money aside for engineering to keep the process moving forward. And the township then would, engage a couple engineering firms. It's like, they know exactly what to do and they're familiar with it.
Patrick, go ahead.
I think, I think this is the path we've got to go down. We've done two different models. We've done the Luke Kidder model, and did a fabulous job. But I don't think that's wise on the township's part to let a volunteer have all the influence and power in one person that we didn't control. Again, Lou was fabulous. I think that's a very dangerous situation. Our current situation, where we're not doing anything, is maybe worse. And so I think we need to move towards this middle ground where we hire somebody. I think we need to hire somebody that has these skills, but well, you may have a more refined opinion about that. But I think we've got to move in that process, down that process.
I think we should write something down.
I agree with Patrick. But there's a reality here. And the reality is right now, at this township, we don't have a full-time administrator. He's only part-time. He's only 2 days a week.
Temporary.
And he's interim. So we're in a state of flux and uncertainty. So at this moment, it's very difficult to assign a person to this task, just at this time.
I understand.
This should be a job description. Not for one person, because when we're all gone, and we will be eventually, it can just be handed to the next group and they would have, and of course they can change things, but I think that we could really make this a solid process.
And maybe that person, the skill set is such that there's another skill set we need here that person could also do, or maybe it's a half-time job or something. And I think we need to be creative about what those needs are and what it could be packaged with or not. before we make a recommendation to the board.
Wasn't, so this was under, the fine, the, David Rowley, administrator, sorry, I'm really tired. So that was his, under his job description, wasn't it?
No, actually, I think there was an idea, and I think it was unworkable, but there was an idea of this kind of this project manager position.
Oh, right.
And all these sort of different needs were sort of thrown into that job description. And I think the reason that we didn't get applicants who were deemed qualified is that it was just too much.
Nobody had all those skills.
Nobody had all those skills, and the price, the salary range that we associated with that position was too low for, the superhuman person who had all those skills. So, so we just, people looked at it and said, well, that sounds like an interesting job, but it's not me and not at that price. And so I think we sort of disaggregated that a little bit. We pulled out the parks, pathways, preserves part of it because there is a revenue stream for that, and made that a separate position because we were getting into a real crisis with having nobody to do that work and pay attention to those needs. But this is a crisis too. This is a different kind of crisis. Maybe part of the recommendation of this committee is for a revenue stream that includes paying for this position. I mean, we have a revenue stream for, road improvements. Maybe there's, if we bump that up just enough, it could pay for the position to actually implement the millage or SAD.
Yeah, I guess it'd be interesting, to look at the language that the $85 a year pays for. Does that allow for administrative costs?
Well, we're at the point of renewal, right?
Right, we're up for renewal, but I guess,
So
what did
we
the
could-
last one, and if the last one didn't, maybe, obviously, it seems like the next one maybe should.
Yeah, I think, the 10% that was taken to give to TAP, that could have been somebody's salary for a project manager.
Well, we don't have to rob paths to pay Paul. We could
Well, no.
do both.
Pathways already has its own millage.
It does now, but at the time it did not, and I think the problem that we ran into is the prior board talked about including that 10% for TAP, but it wasn't written into the language that was approved, so they had to go back and correct it. But it was always my understanding, I wasn't on the board then, but my understanding is that the intent was always to carve out 10% for non-motorized alternative transportation.
That was certainly the sense of the committee. That was gonna happen.
Actually, the first time it was documented was in 2017 in the TAP presentation. When the new committee. Well, but the point is that now we have the Parks and Pathways millage. That should be for the Parks and Pathways, and the roads, because this is what we're presenting to citizens, is this township-wide road SAD. And that should, if we need to have a department for that, maybe that's what should be, paid for out of there, and just keep it separate.
I think that makes sense.
And we put that onto the September agenda as a new item and try and work through. We do need to address the millage, the renewal of these funds prior to December. And it's probably more than a one meeting discussion. I think we brought forward some really great stuff. If we circle backwards, Kathy, you wrote down 2 questions that I think would be well placed to have a legal opinion on, so that as an advisory committee. we can
Let me
forward.
read them back to everyone.
Thank you.
The first one was, is the Board of Trustees responsible for maintenance of a road, of a paved road, after the SAD expires? Did I capture it
I
correctly?
thought the question was, is repaving adding value or not?
Well, that came up in the discussion. I mean, Roy said yes.
No,
She
maintenance.
said no.
The
Okay.
maintenance after a road improvement is finished. Who's responsible?
It is written down somewhere.
Well, that's what, is the board responsible for maintenance of a paved road after the SAD expires?
Should it be township, not board?
Complete. There's complete.
Wait, wait,
It doesn't
guys.
expire.
Well,
Well,
when it's paid off.
it's paid off, it's expired, it's
The,
done.
After that 10 years,
Okay. After the 10 years,
Oh, are we picking up? Someone, Mr. Dennis is not muted.
oh,
You're Robson.
okay, is that okay for the first question?
sure.
Okay,
And
let's
not
go to
to,
the
not to
second.
complicate things, but sorry.
But you're going to.
I'm going to after doing, and maintenance is very broad. Because I mean, obviously, the road commission does
Okay.
maintenance on these subdivisions. There's winter maintenance.
So
there's
repaving, do you want it to be repaving?
Well, I guess that's a question for this committee, because I mean, you know, we call it like routine maintenance.
Yeah.
Which is like street sweeping, you know, taking care of,
Yeah.
you know, whatever, the routine stuff. But then there's also the next step is sometimes defined as heavy maintenance or reconstruction of that road. So it seems like, you know, here again, even the routine maintenance, the township isn't responsible for, it's the road commission. So I guess it's, you know, I like getting the opinion, but we're gonna ask an attorney a complicated question and they're gonna like, what are you trying to ask? You know what I mean?
Well, I thought the question that Jillian raised earlier in the meeting was sort of fundamental. Like, if you go back to a road that has had an SAD at the, I don't know, 10 or 15 year mark, when it is crumbling and turning back into dirt, and you redo it, you tear it up, and you repave it, are you adding value that can then be the subject of another SAD or not? And that was the question I thought you were raising, and that's a different question than a maintenance question.
And another thing is that Shady Oaks, Green Knolls, that neighborhood, their special assessment was under the road commission. So then we're looking at our own. There's this other question about, you know, does the road commission take care of that because they have the original special
I know what their
assessment?
answer would be.
Yeah, we don't, yeah, see, these are just questions and in Luke Hitter's document, it states that once you have a special assessment, you know, an improvement, that the township is responsible.
Well, sort of. My understanding, well, I don't know exactly what it says in Lou's document, but my understanding is that the township made a commitment to those projects that occurred after the township-wide SAD was created in what, 2012? 2013, whenever it was, that if they occurred during that time period, that the township would be responsible for going back and doing the crack sealing. And that kind of, I mean, which I guess is sort of in between heavy maintenance.
Right, it's like, that's called preventative maintenance.
Preventative maintenance.
So these preventative surface, it's like the crack sealing and surface treatments, it's sort of like you do to your driveway. You know, some people seal their driveway, you seal the cracks. That's what the intent of Lou's language, because obviously I was involved with that language. So that's what the township had
So-
agreed to do.
Okay, so there's a lot of intent around, they're being thrown around, but we need to have exact, you know, so everybody's on the same page. And do you have, can you find that, Ian, the language?
Well, I'm looking here. Before deferred maintenance begins, the township-wide SAD commits the township to maintain through 2023 all paved roads upgraded through the neighborhood SAD process since 2008. The township will crack seal your roads approximately 5 years after installation and do a surface treatment 5 years after that. This maintenance will extend the life of your road significantly. So it does kind of,
Just limited
yeah,
to a particular, and we've not had a crack seal yet. But we regularly, every couple of years, they come through and put sealant over the worst spots.
Correct.
I mean, it goes on to talk about the process and best practice and all that, but that's the high level.
So after 2023, then you're out of luck.
So
Is that it?
the ones that are done this year are not gonna benefit
But-
from the maintenance program unless there's some kind of an extension of it.
Unless there's similar language after the new SAD.
After the- after-
If there-
after it's
if there
renewed.
is such a new SAD in similar language or language that's better clarified is in the new, in the new proposal, or it's dropped completely, I guess.
So while you're talking about Bob, I believe Bob, you and Patrick were talking about with TAP regarding if it was gonna be a millage or an SAD or for the township wide. Did you have discussions? Well, I know that you've had some issues there, Patrick, but has there been discussion around that? Because if it's a special assessment, then that just needs township approval with some public hearings. But if it's a millage, that needs to go on the ballot. And then that could always be voted down. So there's that, I mean, it could be later on back to a special assessment, but have you talked about any of that?
I guess there's been some discussion. We started having meetings and Patrick had his incident. But I think in the early discussions, that's what we were looking at, the benefits of a township-wide SAD versus a township-wide millage. And that's what we were trying to, the pluses and minuses. I don't think we're tonight get into all that, but that's what we're trying to do as a subcommittee is like, let's lay that all out. Here's the pluses and minuses of this option. Here's the pluses and minuses of that option. So bring that back to this committee and also bring it back to this HAP committee and have, healthy discussions like, okay,
We were also
eventually we're gonna have to make a recommendation to the township board of how this moves forward,
We're
or
also
if
beginning a
it does
discussion.
move forward.
We're also beginning a discussion about costs, so cost of everything has increased. What does that mean in terms of
Yeah,
whichever way we go?
and if there's kind of a guesstimate of how much money could be there, then we could have ideas of like if, engineering is going to be paid for, or how much maintenance into the future and that type of thing.
Just FYI, in the document where it talks about helping match funds, exactly what Will was talking about. It does say the first three. So it does limit how much the township would actually provide in matching funds, according to this document. And given the project size, if you were at $200,000 or more, the matching funds would be 12,000. So technically speaking, 3 times 12,000 means $36,000 of maximum exposure of the township to any SAD. So that's, in my mind, that's the pot of money that you've got to do engineering, if that's the way we go.
And would we limit only 3 SADs per year? Because if a fourth one came along, that's would they say no, because we'll wait till next year so we can be the first one, or?
Well, remember, that pot of money is sort of renewable in the sense that if an SAD goes forward, then you fold in the cost of the engineering. So it's really sort of to cover the risk, I guess.
All it takes though is one community to come along with 25% and above participants and say, hey, we're really excited to do this, but we need some hardcore engineering. It's $75,000. And then the cost comes back and they say, yeah, no, that doesn't work. I mean, that's another way of looking at it. I think it's a good discussion. I'm just like, you gotta, because you have to document everything. So you got to manage some of the risk as well at the same time.
If there was a way to monetize the amount of time and effort that goes into having the 2-step process, and think about it, streamlining that to a 1-step SAD process, compressed, made more efficient. I think that might help people to sort of imagine the benefit of moving in that
So
direction.
move it faster.
Yeah.
I agree.
Maybe, But I think we still have to get back to the original question, which probably needs to go to the township attorney of, can a local SAD petitioned by citizens be charged for engineering work for an SAD they turned down? Because fundamentally, we're coming up to solutions for that, but we still need to know the answer to the question, because we may not pick this solution.
So the way I had phrased that question was, can the initial engineering be in an SAD on its own? That was what someone
Yeah,
said.
that-
Okay.
It'd be good to know the answer.
Let's put that out there and see if we can get an
Okay.
answer before the September meeting.
I'll contact Mike O'Meara and he's familiar with SADs. Or he has someone in his firm.
Doug, why don't you and I work on it together? Because I think there's, even in this discussion, I hear sort of multiple questions.
Yes.
And I think it may be
Yes.
more than two questions that we're asking him to really get all of the information that the committee wants.
But if we can take those answers, then if we can get it for September, that gives us a little more clear path moving forward. I really do want to have the general discussion about Park Road because Kathy had asked that we get it into the agenda and we're already at 7:50. So yeah, I know.
Starting 15 minutes late though.
You started all of this with Joe Turner, so that dropped
Sure.
off. Or?
Well, his surgery was delayed, so,
Okay.
and then with the campaign and whatnot, I have to connect with him again, but,
Okay.
and so he said September would be the earliest, but if it's October,
Yes.
he was just highly recommended by many people, including David Rowley and Warshaw, so.
We are on a fact-finding mission, so getting more facts would be helpful.
And may I throw one more thing in, because just circling back to where we started with Bob Groden. Mr. Bogan's situation was also something that I discussed very specifically with Jim Murdy, because we're trying to figure out how we can move forward with that. And it sounded like the answer was, we need to dive into the original SAD, Liberty Hills SAD, and see if there was money allocated in that SAD for a berm. And if there was, then let's try and go backwards. The township will have to, work that out. But if it wasn't in the original SAD, there was a proposed SAD and what actually happened, again, in Liberty Hills.
Remember during their public comment, they showed us and it said right here, there's berm, and then Roy pointed out that that was the estimate.
Yes.
I've looked for the actual and I've asked where the actual would be and nobody seems to know where it is. I've been through the file. I mean, I could have overlooked because it's really thick.
It is.
So we need to find that actual, and I'm really curious as to why 2 years later, there was another engineering SAD.
I will admit that I had hoped to be able to accomplish that. Probably 300 pages in that file. Does anyone have any free time to come in and sit with that file with some Post-its and try and find the actual cost from the SAD that was done in Liberty Hills?
I can look, Bob, do you want to help me with that?
That's the only way I can get Mr. Bogan resolved. But given that the township administrator and the township supervisor have both said they're willing to listen to us, we can find that document.
You do that.
So
Just take it out on
Give me the
loan.
300 pages, I'll do it.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember, was it a township SAD or a road commission SAD?
No, they're both township.
It was a township SAD.
The road commission did the work. They were hired.
No, the road commission did not. Okay.
That might be where there was second engineering.
So, well, the first one, they had the engineering with OHM. And OHM, laid out whatever needed to be done. And then Lou brought in his friend from Saline to do the drainage and the gravel work. And then 2 years later, I don't know who talked with that neighborhood and they said, oh, you're ready for your paving. They brought in Washington Engineering, and then Washington Engineering brought in the road commission to go over everything. And the road commission says, well, we can't pave that. You use wrong material. So this is where,
Okay, let's not get into that
anyway,
because
well,
it's.
but the thing is that there's two SADs here and that's when the road commission got involved, was after the second one.
Okay, second one, okay.
Okay, and if I might be so bold as to say, it probably would benefit us to look at the Daleview SAD that has just been done at the same time, see what it actually said would happen. And make sure if we've got citizens that are still unhappy, I understand the Meadows are not happy, but I don't know what that SAD promised either. Specific to, you know, if we've got road right-of-way issues, or if there's anything that should have been done that hasn't been done, or things that are being asked but weren't part of the scope of the SAD.
I texted earlier when this came up, I texted and Janet was commenting, I texted Joe about both that and the Merlin Way SADs.
Great, so we're gonna ask him
So,
to
so
try
I
to.
posed a question to him. I actually had a call into him a couple days ago. I haven't connected with him yet. So I'll keep trying to get Joe in the loop on.
It goes back to, we don't have a project manager. If we had somebody whose job this really was, they would know, but we're all just kind of grasping at straws.
Yeah, every once in a while, I'm chasing Joe, trying to get answers on the different projects that he's overseeing for the township.
Well, because that's a this year project, we've got a better fighting chance. All right, so I think we have a couple of things that are going to happen. Shall we move on to the Park Road general discussion? Which became a general discussion. I'm sorry, I didn't make one for everybody, but I made a copy of Donna Lisinski's letter that she sent to the township, talking about the money that she was able to encumber on our behalf for the benefit of Park Road as well as another project. And now we've got, I don't know that it's a grant.
It is, it's called a grant. It's a little confusing because it's not like the grants that, you know, are competitive where you apply for it and there's matching, often matching funds involved and so on. It's different. It's just a grant of money from the state. It comes, I believe if it's coming the same way as the one last year, it's from the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And it's basically, they ask you, the municipality, to describe what it is that you're going to use the money for, and then they send you back a kind of loosely worded agreement that that's what they're giving you the money to do. And so it's very different from, for example, the MDNR grants that have all sorts of rules and hoops to jump through and so on. And in this case, I can, just a little bit of background. Representative Lisinski approaches not just Scio Township, but all the municipalities in her district and says, you know, okay, we're going into this budget process. Do you have any infrastructure projects that are candidates for funding? And then, you know, she has sort of loose criteria for that. And one of the things that I've learned from working with her on these is that it needs to be framed in terms of a gap. So what are your other likely funding sources? They don't have to be pinned down, but, you know, what are you sort of as a municipality thinking you're going to use to pay for this, and how much do you need in order to get to the whole cost? So in the case of the Park Road improvement, we, you know, sort of gave her a description of where we thought the other costs, you know, the other revenue sources to help pay for the overall cost would come from, and framed it in terms of, if there was state funding to add to this mix, it would make it a much more doable project, because then the amount that we would have to come up with from those other sources, in particular, if there was an SAD involved, would be much lower. So that's how we presented it to her, and she came back with exactly the number that we said in terms of the gap. And that budget envisioned a $600,000 SAD. So if you were to, and that's, you know,
Total, 600,000?
yeah, so if you had a $600,000 SAD and you spread it over the number of parcels that are envisioned for that project, it would come out to about $800 per parcel. So if you spread that out
Over 10 years.
over 10 years, it'd be like $80 per year. So it's comparable to what the township-wide SAD is. It's actually a little less than the township-wide SAD cost to those properties for that improvement. That it's a pretty significant improvement to that area of the township.
So we'll, just to take a few steps back, when you submitted the other likely funding sources to Donald Lazinski's office, what did you identify as the other likely funding sources?
So the mix. Let's see if I can- Okay, so it envisions a total cost of $2 million. And the township would pay $500,000 from the road SAD, because this project was always envisioned as one of the projects that would be paid for out of the 10-year township-wide road SAD. $100,000 from TAP funds. And those are local TAP funds, not federal TAP funds, and an SAD for $600,000. So that's where you get a gap of $800,000. I did the math right.
I just want to make the point that this is the first time I'm hearing these numbers. So it would be the first time any other board members are hearing the numbers too. And I think that that's something we should have discussed at the board level. Even if it's just information sharing, like when you gave the supervisor's report that week or month, just share, this is what you stated, this is the application that went in. And so people knew what was going on, and that may or may not have triggered a discussion. Probably would have, but still, it would have been better to have had the discussion.
Wouldn't this project have been for the road advisory committee to be looking at? I mean, of course, I've heard about the Park Road SAD for a long time, potential SAD, because it was not initiated by the board, but anyway, yeah, because what is, it sounds like it's pretty complete as far as what's going to happen.
Well, so this project was one that I inherited. A lot of work had already been done to sort of like conceptualize it. And I don't know if it happened with the prior road committee or through some other procedure, but some of these discussions had already been ongoing. I know that the project itself, the idea of improving Park Road, and I think originally the project included going all the way up Stabler, was one of the projects that was on the sort of long list of things that were to be, it was kind of the wish list of projects to be accomplished with the road SAD back in 2013. So, I mean, David Reed would have been involved, other people would have been involved, but it's a long time sort of capital road project that's been, discussed at various points by different people. Now, whether it's ever been brought to the board in anything other than here's our list of projects that we hope to accomplish over the course of the SAD, I don't know. When we sat down last year before we had a reconstituted roads advisory committee, it was, just sort of, here's the things that are, still lingering that, haven't been done. And, some of them turned into conflicts, like the SAD discussion in East Delhi and Railroad Street. And others, we had a town meeting on this question of Park Road, where we invited all of the neighbors of that area to participate, and we actually had a pretty good discussion.
There were a
good
lot
discussion.
of concerns addressed or expressed, and it was left open-ended. There was no statement of what the path was going to be. It was just left open-ended when it concluded.
That
And
to that discussion at that town hall, yeah,
Yes.
it was only meant
Yes.
to be sort of an initial discussion. It wasn't meant to like be a decision point because
And that leads to my next question or point. Do we want to have an additional public information session? Because I am now hearing for the first time from you that you're contemplating the $600,000 in SAD funds from the residents who live in the area. And
Kathy, can Roy interject? If you go to the
Yes.
page that's stapled to Donna Lisinski's letter, Roy actually came up with sort of a report or a thought. I'm
And
sorry.
I also, yeah, go ahead, Dick, 'cause I can give you a little background too, because obviously Park Road, I mean, you talk about being paved, Arbor Point subdivision was built and it started in 1997. And Ms. Duran Cook was the developer, and part of that road improvement agreement included paving Park Road. So if you go back to 1997, 96, that's when, I mean, you can probably go back further, but I know for a fact it was discussed probably at the township because the township was involved with the development. Because there was a subdivision that got approved by the Scio Township Board back in 96, 97, I don't know exactly. They started building homes. Late 90s, I moved into Arbor Point in 2002, so I do live in that neighborhood. So I was well aware. In their bylaws, there is language that if Park Road were ever to be paved, they'd have to be required to participate in SAD. Later in late 90s or early 2000, the development on the other side, Country French, was put in place. Here again, those were not public roads, they were private roads. The township was involved in that, the road commission to some extent, but since they were private roads, not so much. That language was not included in the Country French subdivision development, condo development. But that was, it's like, okay, if we can get both subdivisions to agree, then moving forward, and then Timber Ridge, right? Timber, used to be Hunter Creek.
Trailwoods.
Trailways. That came along. And then the road commission and the township, part of those discussions were those new, I forget the numbers of homes, but it's all in that thing, would also be required to participate in SAD. So that's where we got the 600 to 700 homes could be included in the township or neighborhood SAD. The developer is going to pave the remaining part of Stabler and Park Road between Cedar Ridge and Stabler. They're doing that. I'm not sure exactly the schedule. It was supposed to be done last year. It's supposed to be done this year. I drove it today and obviously it's not done yet. We're running out of season, so I'm not sure it's going to be done this year. So in the meantime, Representative Lisinski has, graciously found $800,000 to put towards this road improvement project. Having done quite a few SADs in my lifetime, and Jillian's right on. If there's not a direct benefit, it becomes pretty difficult to assess people. So even though like in my neighborhood, I live back in the back, probably in the 20+ years I've lived there, I drove that section between Zeeb Road and Cedar Ridge twice, because there's no reason for me to drive that. I mean, I'll go the back way to Menards, but there's no reason for me to drive that. And the people in Country French who don't have that language in there, if there's people that live like right at the front of Country French, they just go out to Zeeb Road every day and they've probably maybe never been on that section. So I think include them in SAD could be legally challenging here. I'm not an attorney, but I've done a lot of these, because what is their direct benefit? It's going to be, even if it is $80 a year, if you don't show a direct benefit, it's going to be, someone's going to challenge it and you're probably going to lose. So thinking this through, I came up with this, a potential option is, the people in Country French, people myself, have been paying the $85 a year, and it's soon to be 10 years. I will need to cheat this. That is like 434 lots. So the 10 years, they contributed about $368,000. That piece of Park Road, we've held off putting stone on it because we keep thinking it's gonna be paved, it's gonna be paved. So we haven't actually put any limestone on it. And then the next 10 years, if you did that same $85 with the additional subdivision, now we're up to 748 lots. That's $85. A parcel generates another $635,000. Those two, the township-wide SID is going to generate basically $1 million from all those homes. You put that with Donna's money, and the township would either kick in some money from the township-wide SAD or the TAP money for the trail. I think you could do it without having to do a specific SAD just for those neighborhoods. Here again, it's not because of me. Actually, I would probably sign up. I'd pay my $85 or $100 a year. It's not about that. And the other thing, when we did the township-wide SAD, I mean, a lot of you weren't involved with it, but you always had some major projects. And there was paving of North Delhi, which is basically from Huron River Drive up to the township line. If you're not familiar with that part of the township, but it's a steep, windy road that goes up from the Huron River Drive. Every major rain event, most of that stone would come down and end up in the Huron River. We'd grade it back up the road and come back down. So it's a major project, about $800,000. We'll set aside, just like, let's just pave that road with money from the township-wide SAD. The other one was Scio Ridge Road between Liberty and South Church. That was a local road, and this money was set aside in the township-wide SAD to repave that. It was repaved, and the road commission agreed to take it over as a primary road. So now that's sort of their responsibility. The other major project was Liberty Road from Zeeb to the West Stagsley. It's a road built over about 30 foot of muck. And over the years, the road commission has put stone in and put stone in. There's about 20 foot of stone, so there's only another 10 foot of stone will actually be to the bottom. But what they also done to engineer it is they put this geogrid, which is like a fabric, but it helps bridge the project. So we did that to help stabilize and keep the stone up so it doesn't keep sinking in. And that was done. So those is another way that Park Road, if there was another, 2023 to 2033 township-wide SAD, you'd say, okay, let's decide to put a certain amount of money township-wide into this project besides these revenues that already are going to be generated. So that was one, here again, I just, Will set something out and I just jotted down 7 things or 8 things of how, if we really wanted to think about this, here again, there's other options, there's other ways to do it, but I was just sort of like, this would be a way, if we really want to do Park Road, because what's going to happen when the new subdivision is done, that is going to be an easy way for those people to get to Zeeb Road, because if they're trying to get on I-94, if not, they're going to go down Stabler Road, go to Jackson, go through Jackson, turn around and go back to get, so it's gonna be quicker for them just to come down Park Road, turn left on Zeeb and go right to the freeway. So there's gonna be a need in my mind to pave that piece of Park Road in the near future.
I was there and trucks were driving down like big.
Well, trucks are driving in because that's how the
Right,
truck traffic.
and the dust that was getting kicked up, I mean, part of the benefit of this, last summer, I was getting all kinds of calls, and I started getting them again this spring from people who live on either side about the dust, and sort of desperate for help. So it's the quality of the dirt road, it's the dust that gets kicked up, which is, as someone in the road commission explained to me, is basically the road surface being just redistributed,
Blown away, right?
being blown away, and I think it's the pathway as well, extending, that's part of it too, is extending the non-motorized pathway. That's why TAP funds are part of this. But it's also a benefit to those neighborhoods. I think we should recognize if this section isn't paved and Trailwoods subdivision fulfills its commitment to pave Stabler all the way to the rear entrance to these 2 neighborhoods, traffic is going to start rerouting to meet with the pavement.
Right, they're gonna cut through the neighborhoods, or they're gonna use the gravel piece and there'll be great dust. And I mean, rule of thumb, if you have more than 1,000 cars on a gravel road, it's nearly impossible to maintain as a gravel road. Which I'm sure with the trail, that development, you're gonna get over that 1,000 threshold. So anyways, this is just one option that I threw out.
Okay, this is good to hear. I think this should have been shared with the entire group.
Well, that's what we are.
Well, but they haven't, we don't all have a copy of this.
I'm sorry, Kathy, that was my fault. I left some of the copies I had on my counter. I only had 5 copies. And so this is not a discussion we're going to finish this evening.
Okay.
It was a concept. Will had a concept. We've got some funding that we need to, in some point in the next couple of years, allocate towards this project. And we don't know how to do that yet, so.
Or not. I mean, that's a decision too. We don't have to do Park Road. It's not like,
Well, from what I understood, not Trailwoods, the new subdivisions going in, or is it including Trailwoods, that they were responsible to pave Stabler up to a certain point? So then we're gonna have this gap from Cedar Ridge, is that what you said? So how, is that like a half mile?
If you look at this page in the packet, it makes it easier to sort of visualize, because it shows that whole area, and then the sort of left-hand side of the page, this is the overall project layout page. It shows Stabler coming down, and then the pavement that Trailwoods is responsible is Stabler, and then round on Park all the way to just past the 2 rear entrances. So I guess Lafayette and Cedar Ridge, where it intersects with Park.
So we wouldn't want that paved until the construction's finished, because those big trucks. Do we know when the construction, that new neighborhood, I don't know what it's called.
Trailwood.
It's, I
that
drove
Trailwoods?
through it, it's, they're finishing this phase here and this phase here, those are the parts that are currently under construction. I don't know exactly when they're gonna finish all of those units.
Okay.
You're right, though. Build a brand new road and then send a truck down it, it's a disaster. That's not great.
right, but I mean, roads can get built, and trucks drive on them every day.
Yeah.
I mean,
One truck is equivalent of 100,000 vehicles traveling, regular vehicles traveling down the road.
right,
typically.
they do damage, but you design that in. I mean, good news is all the roads have been built. So that's a lot of the heavy equipment, bringing all the stone and bringing all the asphalt in.
Oh.
Now it's gonna be just the home construction, but which will be, but it won't be all the heavy trucks, it won't be the gravel trains. It'll be more, the box trucks will bring in, the wood for the framing of the homes and those type of things.
The bridge on Stabler, is that included in?
Yes, that's what's,
Part of what's delayed them is that was complicated and they had to get permitting from Eagle because it's crossing Honey Creek, and they had a different idea about how they wanted to do it from Eagle, and so they had to, it just took a long time.
This grant, is there an expiration?
We don't have the agreement yet. The money, as I understand it, will be finalized, all of those arrangements will be finalized this fall.
So if we don't move on that right now, or let's say if we do move on that, because sometimes I think with grants, you have to use it within a certain period of time.
These kinds of, you're right, but these kinds of grants are much more flexible, much more sort of forgiving than other kinds of grants. And even those grants like the MDNR grant that was for the 300,000 for Zeeb Road pathway, the state kept extending it because basically once the state grants money, they've already made the decision at that level that they want this project to go through. So they try to be helpful and supportive.
But overall, I think this is sitting in on a lot of these Park Road SAD ideas and listening to residents and whatnot. This one seems to be the best plan so far. Now, I need to study it more because we just got this document, but from just the bits and pieces I know over time. And I like the fact, so this, and then taking money from TAP, you said, for the sidewalk, or the pathway or whatever to connect to the neighborhoods that already have Is that what,
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. That's part of the, I mean, here again, it's very fluid. This is just, yeah, I threw someone against the wall and then you take and figure out what makes some sense in going forward. But yeah, I think, because from the TAP's perspective, there is a plan, you know, to connect these neighborhoods along Zeeb Road, obviously Zeeb Road with the connection all the way to the border to border. There's plans to extend, you know, a trail from Stabler out towards Jackson Road. So there's a bigger network that I don't have time to get into, but yeah, filling this gap would make a lot of sense because you continue to connect neighborhoods to Zeeb Road and to the west and to the east and to the, you know, north.
so the other piece of this project was a street light or a light at Zeeb and Zeeb and Park. And that was going to be part of the one idea, SAD idea. Can that be covered with the grant, or is it because that is a county road and we would have to get the county involved with decisions or?
County is, that's what my understanding is, they're the ones sort of requiring it. So yeah, the grant would be eligible to use that money or the township wide SAD.
For the light?
Too, yeah.
And all of these funding sources, I think even the TAP source could be viewed as being, you know, as that light could be eligible for that because part of the benefit of that light is a pedestrian safety for people crossing at that point, crossing Zeeb at that point.
How much is a light? Does anybody?
5,000,
How much?
200,000 probably.
Is there annual fees?
Since it's a primary road, I don't think they charge the township, but obviously I don't work there anymore. But yeah. And I mean, the big cost generally is the road work, which the Zeeb Road work's done, the east leg of Park Road's done. So it really be the road work, which is part of this project. So it's really just a signal cost, but they're $150,000 to $200,000.
The pathway at that point is all paved. It's so
The sidewalks on most of the quadrants, yeah, I think all
so
of
the
the
boardwalk is when it gets more expensive. But I think that whole stretch would be just basically finishing the, you know, segment to connect to the trails. And I don't know if you can make them out in the diagram, but there's actually two trails through Trail Woods. One runs along Stabler, and the other one sort of snakes up through the woods that are in the middle of Trail Woods and comes all the way up and connects to an existing pedestrian bridge because Menards already built their portion of that pathway. So you can go to Menards, and if you walk down the sort of east side of the building, there's a very nice pathway that goes to a very nice bridge over the Honey Creek, and then it just stops. And that's where the Trailwoods path would connect and allow people to come down through the woods all the way to Park Road.
So I think we might be at a logical stopping point here just for time-wise. Do you wish this to be on the September agenda? Or do we want to push this into October? There's not a huge rush for it other than Trailwoods, under their development agreement, was obliged to do the construction of the road after they began phase 3.
In pathway.
And they are in phase 3 now. So they are trying to move it forward. Whether it will happen this year or not, we don't know. And Representative Lisinski correctly pointed out, and it's been pointed out before, that if you can take the two road projects and combine them, there probably are some savings, but we're so late to the game on this particular part of the road project for the missing link between Zeeb Road and Cedar Ridge. I don't know that we can get that accomplished this year under any circumstance, but I'm not quite sure that they're going to be able to do the work they need to do before the season ends this year on Park Road, the Day Trailwoods either.
How close to finishing phase 3 are they?
The roads are in, they have not yet begun lot sales.
But the houses are up?
No,
Few that have been
so there are no houses there. The
Oh,
roads are in, the utilities are in, but
I drove through today, and they've got these big numbers for the lots. So if you want to go through and sort of get a sense where the houses are going to go, you can actually sort of see the little markers right there.
I believe there's 3 houses Jonathan Greenberg lives at the back. He sold that property, so.
Yeah, he's sort of like right in the middle.
Yeah,
You
yes.
can see him on the diagram.
Yeah, 5 acres in this middle of this huge neighborhood.
Subdivision.
So, yeah, there's a house that the last time I was there, which is the basement, and now it's already 3 stories. I was like, wow.
Yeah,
So they're moving pretty fast.
They're moving fast, and the families on the sort of west side of the Trailwoods are already living there. They're already, establishing neighborhoods, so.
And I think, ideally, yeah, you try to do them all, but I mean, a $2 million project in trying to tie the township segment, let's call it the township segment between Cedar and Zeeb. Ideally, yes, but $2 million project is a big enough project that you're gonna get competitive prices on anyways. And I think we as a township have enough other things going on, trying to tie it to their project is just gonna complicate it. It seems like we just need to do our own standalone project and see, if it has merit and moves forward. Let them do their project when they can. Hopefully it's this year, maybe it's next year,
Well, we wouldn't be able to do this year anyway.
But no, this is definitely not this year, and it might not be next year. So that's what I'm saying, having the expectation that they're
Once
gonna be
once
tied
they
together.
build their portion, the argument for this will become more so obvious.
Mhm.
So there would still need to be public hearings and whatnot.
Oh, yeah. Public input, discussions, exactly.
Well, especially if it's an SAD. And I should say that the way that I inherited this project, it already was envisioned as an SAD involving those 3 neighborhoods.
Right. Like I said, the original orientation was in 1997 when our point went in, that language is in there for an SAD. So that's it wasn't way before you, Will.
I
I don't know who the supervisor was in 97, but yeah.
Like lots of different fingerprints on this thing.
Am I understanding correctly that we should push this forward then into an October agenda? It doesn't necessarily need to be on the September agenda?
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. One, I would love to know about any of these that are coming down the pipeline that we don't know about. So if there's anything else, I think we need to know. So I'm backing up your comment. And I cannot stress enough community involvement. Because if it's not public, it becomes another railroad. And we don't want to I don't want to have my name against anything like that. So, I know it's a public meeting, but anything that we can do to make people be aware that we're having this discussion so that, people are aware, it's really, really important. That's my 2 comments.
When I put it on the October agenda, should I frame it as how shall we have a public discussion about this? Or should we noodle it somewhere?
There's already been a public meeting,
Yes, there
Yeah.
is.
at last
Probably need
June.
another one.
Oh, yeah.
Not last June, but a year ago last June. And yes, absolutely. I think especially because, this is taking form in a slightly different way from how it was envisioned before. But it's, this isn't the first time that this committee's heard about it. I put this in the sort of on the agenda, the first meeting of this really reconstituted committee. So
It was more
no,
of
it was-
an idea though.
yes, exactly. We skimmed over the top of it, and now we've spent actually quite a bit more time than we could have in that meeting. But absolutely, I agree about involving the public, having people have a chance to give input, especially if we're considering different options. But I don't know of any other projects like this that are sort of still on the list. This is kind of like the big, unfinished project from the township-wide SAD. This is the one that was, how are we going to possibly do this? And actually, Trailwoods biting off that big chunk of Stabler and Park all the way to Cedar Ridge makes this much more plausible. And then, this money that Representative Lozinski acquired from the state is sort of like another big step in the right direction.
Does anyone have anything else on that subject? Pretty well beat it. We will come back to it. It is an important one. I'd like to move on just because we've got one other piece I really wanted to discuss. Roy Townsend had pointed out that we, as advising board, would be well advised to come up with a list of 2023 projects that we want to put in front of the Washington County Road Commission early enough that they could be addressed by the Washington County Road Commission in the early spring and potentially added to the 2023 road agreement that would be happening with Scio. This kind of goes to thinking strategically forward. And so I don't know that we have a solution to how to choose those roads right now, but two things came up during this meeting this evening. One of them was when Ian was reading Lou Kitter's document, and there was sort of an implied promise there that SADs that had been done starting in 2018 would be honored with crack sealing and preventive maintenance. And I'm looking at my list and I see the 3 2021 SADs, Bellevue, Merlin, and Westview Way and Wagner Ridge Court that became 2022 projects. And then I see Cottontail, Thorn, Hinge, I'm not sure, Lamplighter, Pheasant, and Cottontail Thorn again as 2020 SADs. So we've got 7.
Well, Lamplighter was not improved.
Yeah, Lamplighter chose not to go forward.
Okay, that was just engineering. I apologize. That was $19,500 worth of engineering that didn't happen as a SAD. So I guess my point is, if we are looking at how to choose roads that need attention, and we've got that piece of document as well, I'd like to bring that to the September and October agendas as an important piece that actually needs decisions to be made. So that in November, we've got something we can pull together for the Washington County Road.
What is the deadline for them? When do they need their list?
It'll be next spring.
Oh, okay, we have some
But
time.
like by February, March.
Yeah.
Okay.
And December is always kind of a hard month again.
I think this is a great idea to try and influence what projects the road commission presents to the township instead of waiting just to see what they come up with.
This was Roy's strategic thing.
And Linda, Ian's got the report. When I did the 22 list, I actually proposed some projects for 23. So we have a start. And you know, how did I do it? I just went back, what did we do? You know, basically, you know, roads need to be some type of re-graveling every 5 to 7 years. I just took the list, because I had the list from 2013 all the way up to 21. So I looked at, okay, what was done in 13, 14, 15 that hasn't been redone? So I, you know, some are added this year, some are added next year. So that list, if people don't have it, it was in, you know, is that the May packet?
I think it goes back further than that. I think
April?
I'm in the April packet.
I don't know, it was a while ago. So I think that could be a starting point for, you know, if you want to know, it's not all that magical. You just look at, you know, what was done, when it was done, how much traffic is on that road and other things. And so it's not, you know, some roads need to be done sooner than others.
Does the road commission ever, well, I mean, this is the previous road advisory committee, ever come to the committee and say, oh, you have a road that we feel needs to have maintenance, or do they do anything like that? Just,
I mean, they're working off that same, I mean, they're using sort of the same information.
Okay.
You know, so, I mean, I got the information from them of when they did all the projects and, you know, and we can,
Roy,
They're
would you be
forming-
willing to resend that
sure.
so that we could include it in the October
Yep.
packet or September packet? I'm sorry.
Yep.
That would be great. So
Yeah.
that's about as much as we need to do with the formula to choose, but I really think this whole thinking strategically piece is important.
And think about culverts too.
Right.
Thank you. Yes, we should. All right, I had put in there a recommendation to clarify for the Board of Trustees how to get projects to go. We've sort of rounded that the backdoor way this evening. I'd like to push that forward to the next meeting after we hear from Mr. Homier and we have some more answers to how to get SCDs to move forward, if that's all right with everyone. That's fine. Does anyone have anything else from any neighborhood meetings? I know that we've already talked about the Park Ridge walkthrough. Is there anything else to report there? Patrick, do you have anything to report from TAP or Kathy?
I wasn't there.
All right. Does anyone else have any other?
Yeah, we really actually didn't have a chat meeting because we had the pros.
The pros
plan.
meeting, right, yeah,
Exactly. So public input for the,
in this very room.
this very room, so.
The DDA did meet recently, and I don't know that you all have followed or not. We were talking about the Washtenaw County Road Commission road agreement for Scio Township. There's actually two that they present to the township board for requesting funding each year. The first one is sort of residential roads, and then the road agreement, second road agreement, I think is what they call it, is commercial roads or business roads. And the DDA had attempted to get Dino Drive, which was one of the ones that was suggested, sort of a voluntary contribution from some of the business owners on the dead end road, with some matching funds potentially from the DDA as a agreement that would get worked on this year. And it was reported that the DDA has not been successful in getting any kind of substantial funding from the majority of the owners of the businesses on that road. So we were not successful in obtaining the funding we had hoped would be the matching funding for that road.
So Bob got some.
Yes, some, but not
not
enough.
all, and some of the ones that are heavy users with a lot of frontage said no, which was very disappointing.
And so apparently the township board had not signed the second road agreement, so we weren't bound to it with the Washtenaw County Road Commission. And it sounds like Dino Drive as a project for 2022 has quietly faded to the background for the moment.
So in Public Act 188, the township can initiate a special assessment. And the only way, I mean, that would have to go in front of the board, public hearings and whatnot. And the only way that would be if I guess the people on Dino Drive came back with a written objection petition of 20%, and that would stop it. And then you're back at square one. But, this is something that, we do this for neighborhoods. There's no reason we can't do that for that business district. And I just drove down there.
It's a mess.
I was out there, collecting yard signs, and I was down Dino Drive a couple of weeks ago, and there's a lot of trash, in our park. It has been cleaned up. But, it's kind of fun going over that road in a truck, but, just driving down there, if somebody's going to the park, that's not gonna be fun.
No, it's getting bad.
It's bad.
And the township has a particular interest in that road because of the park trailhead at the end. But I think the sense I had at the DDA meeting is that the effort to sort of get voluntary contributions just hadn't resulted in enough. So the DDA was, I think the sense I had is that they wanted to try an SAD with the property owners, but in order to do that during this construction season, there just wasn't time. So it's sort of kicking the Dino Drive can down the road to 23 probably.
We could add it into our formula for how to choose, because again, we will expect to see a road agreement for residential roads from the Washtenaw County Road Commission, as well as a second road agreement for business roads for 2023.
So it would be good to have clarity for the road commission, because part of the problem is that they have written a second agreement to include all of the remaining side roads off of Jackson, and instead what we need is one that just focuses on Dino Drive. And I was talking with Jim Harmon about that, and then he retired, so that was another problem.
I would push that forward to the next discussion as well, but that would be my DDA report. Well, more eloquently explained it. Does anyone else have anything else to talk about? We've got a number of people online that here would like to comment. So is there anyone else that has anything else before I invite public comment? And because of the hour of the evening, to our Zoom audience, I would ask that you restrict your comments to 3 minutes, please, each. We are trying very hard to listen to you. I'm not sure who was on first. But if you would like to speak, would you please raise your hand? And I just. If you would like to speak at this point in the meeting, from our Zoom audience, would you please raise your hand? Seeing no hands raised, I believe that we may end the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Ray Townsend, motion to adjourn, Kathleen Knol, seconds. Please say yes, you'd like to adjourn by.
Yes.
Aye. All right,
No objections.
no objections. All right, thank you very much for watching the meeting this evening. I'm going to close the meeting out. We appreciate your participation.
Far too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.